All right, the defending national champion with one blowout win as expected under its belt. Look straight ahead at the Auburn Tigers out of the SEC this Saturday for the first big challenge of 2017. We bring in Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland to help us set up Clemson's personnel as we head toward week 2. Ryan, how you doing this afternoon?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely appreciate it. 56-3 as expected. Kent State inexplicably throws 5 passes while losing by 40 and 50 points. But we're talking Clemson football. And, of course, Dabo Swinney with some favorable comments concerning the quarterback situation and the play of Kelly Bryant in week 1. In a sense, you can gather little against the opponent, but at the same time, he still had to make the throws, make them on time, and make the right reads. So your assessment after week 1.
Yeah, and you said it, but Kent State is pretty weak. They're not good in the MAC. Haven't won that conference since the 70s. So caution with taking too much optimism from this game. But given how little we had seen from Kelly Bryant, we really didn't know. And so his performance was really good, and that's really, really encouraging. He went 16 for 22, had 236 yards, had a long run, had a very long throw to Deion Kane, which was a perfect deep ball. There's an interception, but it really wasn't his fault. He looked the part. He looked like a very good quarterback. If not elite, he looked good enough to win a lot of games with, but surrounded by the talent that he has with him and a great defense. So definitely encouraging. We'll get a real test next week.
Talking Clemson football with Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland as the Tigers prepare for the other Tigers from the SEC, a team that they beat on the Plains last season. But we know what the storyline is and has been throughout the offseason with all the losses of personnel, especially the star players on offense. Your thoughts about maybe some guys that you saw in that we've talked about many times in terms of the recruiting process, in terms of guys that are on that second and third tier on the depth chart that now need to play and make impact plays, and what you saw out of a particular handful of players.
Yeah, a lot of guys stood out. We're replacing Wayne Gallman, the running back. He's now on the New York Giants. And C.J. Fuller had been a backup. He was sufficient. Adam Troyce had been a backup. He was all right. Feaster had kind of a nagging shoulder injury last year and wasn't that great. All 3 of them looked very good. They all looked good enough to start. Fuller started the game off with a long touchdown run. Feaster really showed his speed as he probably should have got caught and just burst past everyone for a long touchdown run of 47 yards. Travis Etienne, who's a true freshman out of Louisiana, was kind of a late recruit into the last recruiting class, looked really good. A lot of us thought he might redshirt, given there's 3 guys ahead of him, but he is he's reminiscent of Wayne Gallman in the way he runs, kind of a violent runner, good burst, and he had a long 54-yard run. He looked very good. So it looks like Clemson at running back will be fine, and then a wide receiver. Clemson has plenty of depth, and that was on display. The other guy who I thought stood out, who was more of a question mark, was Milan Richard. He came into the game. He's a starting tight end, came in with 1 career reception for 9 yards. And he had a nice game and seems like, he's not necessarily going to be a guy we go to a lot, but he picked up 70 yards receiving. Seems like he could be sufficient and won't be a weakness, and that's what we need. We really weren't sure. Garrett Williams was supposed to start towards ACL. So we lost Jordan Leggett to the Jets. Then we lost Garrett Williams to injury. So Milan Richard, we really need him to come through. And he seems like he's going to, so that's great.
We've got Ryan Cantor on the line from Shaking the Southland, helping us set up at Clemson. Auburn should be a good one. At 56-3, it's probably difficult to find any concerns that were exposed against Kent State. But as you prepare for Auburn, a team that's projected to be in the top 10 to 15 in the country, that we couldn't gather a whole lot from its performance in week 1, either against a quality opponent. Any thoughts about what you need to see this week? What could be some areas of not necessarily concern, but hey, this is a question mark. We know that we've got talent in place there. They just haven't proven it against this kind of foe.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn's front, Auburn in the trenches is going to be a totally different ball game. So it's really hard to take what we did against Kent State and say that we're going to do that against a super talented front line. Auburn has 3 different 5-star guys in their depth chart on the D line. So it's going to be a challenge. We'll see if we could run block as well as we did against Kent State. That was a struggle last year, and it was an area where we think we're going to be a lot better this year with so many guys returning. but we'll see. Auburn's going to be a real test, and we'll see if Kelly Bryant, who was very good, against a totally overmatched opponent, will continue to be good against a very good defense. So it'll be a real test, and we'll see if we're as good as we think we might be.
Florida State and Clemson have owned this conference since, I believe, 2011. So I know that Clemson has to be, and its fan base, confident prior to the situation with Florida State taking on Alabama, despite what was said on the national level, that probably 75 to 80% of the pundits out there kind of measured the quarterback situation and thought, okay, Derwin James is back for Florida State, and made a few analogies or analysis, I should say, going into this thing to tab Florida State as the team that should emerge. But now we got no DeAndre Francois at Florida State. So I'm probably asking the wrong person, but still would love your assessment of Florida State and what possibly could happen here in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the predictions of Florida State winning the conference were out of line at all. I think that's a totally reasonable prediction early in the season. And I toured it there. I went back and forth between Clemson and Florida State. But I did pick Clemson to win the ACC prior to week 1. And my thought around that was they lost Dalvin Cook, which is a huge deal. He was an outstanding running back. And because he was banged up at times and because Deshaun Watson was so good at Clemson, it seems like that loss is a little overlooked. So the question is, can their offense – how bad was their offensive line? Was Dalvin Cook so good that he was creating holes and just finding a way, or was their offensive line sufficient that, Jacquez Patrick or whoever, Cam Akers could come in there and do it? And Alabama was really tough to judge against, but they could not run the ball at all. That awful O-line pass blocking finally got DeAndre Francois hurt, and that's not something we're happy about. It's awful. We want to see him be okay, obviously. But that was almost inevitable with the way the hits he takes. And so it's kind of just come to bear after. I mean, the poor guy, he's likable because he's tough as nails because he just gets drilled and he keeps getting up. But, I think their offensive line wasn't going to be good enough for them to win the conference anyway, particularly with the trip to Clemson. If it was in Florida State, maybe a little different. Now without their quarterback, I think Clemson's the spot-on favorite. I think we're a lot better up front on the lines, both on offense and defense, and now probably a quarterback too.
All right. If it hadn't already been a situation which Clemson could overcome and get its quarterback ready for Florida State to late in the season, now the path seems to be wide open for the Tigers. But in terms of national ranking and college football playoff perception by the committee, this is a big one with the Auburn Tigers coming up this week. Ryan Cantor from Shaking the Southland joining us to talk Clemson football. Please join him there and the rest of the crew for the best in Clemson football coverage. Ryan, we appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you.